36, District 36, right, Kyle? District 36.
Try to be there.
Okay, everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Pierce. I'm the state representative for House District 36. That's all of Anderson Township, Union Township, and Adams Township. Excited to have this town hall tonight. We have the room reserved for an hour. The library does close at 8. I think they would. Excited to have this town hall tonight. We have the room reserved for an hour. The library does close at 8. I think they would be generous enough to go a little bit longer. I think we'd be totally fine there. In terms of kind of the rules, there aren't really many rules really at all. I'm going to go pretty short in terms of my talk. I want to use most of this time for Q&A. My only request is if someone's asking a question, even if you just disagree with the question or whatever it is, there are other times and other places to have those disagreements. Each of you are constituents. If you're not a constituent, you're from a drivable distance to here, and you have the right to kind of have your question asked. I'm not going to ask anyone to leave, so if I start taking questions and someone wants to just, go and talk for the next 2 hours, they can do that. I'm not going to stop you. Now that being said, we also have a lot of people here, so I would ask, if you have a question, have a question. If you have a statement, more than one statement. I'm not good. My goal is in no means to cut anyone off. I also do want, if people have other questions, I don't have it where someone doesn't get able. Someone's not able to ask a question because others aren't allowing it as well. But that being said, I'm not going to, ask you to stop talking. So it's just one of those I ask for kind of, self-monitoring, if you will. So I'll be real quick again on my remarks. So this is my second term, third session. I'm the vice chair on the House Financial Institutions Committee, serve on the House Elections Committee, and I was just joined this session on the House Environmental Affairs Committee. Had a couple of bills moved this year. One of them was on public depositories for local units of government, on kind of more flexibility on kind of how they invest in different options. Had a DNA bill like 23andMe, Ancestry.com, protecting the users. When the bill was filed in January, it was kind of a conceptual issue of what happens if one of those two major companies would get bought or sold or go under. And then about 3 weeks ago, that's exactly what happened with 23andMe. So a bill, knock on wood, that will get finished probably the next 2 to 3 days. That would work to protect users of those different services. And then had a couple different bills that didn't make it past the finish line. But that's kind of on my end, kind of what I've been working on. A couple of different bills that were that gotten a lot of attention this year. Every 2 years, on the the odd numbered years, there's a thing called a long session. So in session for 4 months, so from January pretty much to the end of the month, or end of April. And we have a short session on the even numbered years. It'll be basically January to about March. And during the long session, we're doing the budget. We will have a budget probably by next Thursday, but by the end of April for sure.
We'll be making about $2 billion of cuts from the budget that was passed the House about a month ago. And you'll see kind of across the board cuts as we kind of go through the next 2 years of economic growth. There is growth in those 2 years, but they're offset by inflation and whatnot. Beyond that, SB1's gotten a lot of attention. It's a property tax bill where we shift away the locals government reliance so much on property taxes as really the strongest funder of them to allow for more balance between property tax and income tax. Through that property tax bill, over the next 3 years, homeowners will see a $1.3 billion in savings. Farmers will see $125 million in savings. We also cut the ability for locals in terms of how much they can tax on things on local income. Already today, there's a thing called LIT, or local income tax. Today, they can tax you up to 3.75% of your income. We are taking that down 23% to 2.9%, both saving Hoosier taxpayer dollars, but also making sure when we have that local government, though it's reasonable growth and it has long-term stability. A couple other issues we worked on this year, housing issues. House Bill 1005 actually just passed the House for the last time today. That provides more funding for housing opportunities. We have multiple healthcare bills on childcare that we're working on in a whole different array. So that's it in a nutshell. Like I said, I promised you I'd be very, very quick. So I want to take as many questions as possible. So with that, questions? Yes. And you don't have to say your name, but if you would like to, happy to hear.
That's Melanie Wright, but just different.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you. So with the Union School Corporation closure and that amendment one that was added to Senate Bill 1 at the really last minute.
Yep.
What are the implications of that for small rural schools? Are we looking in the future years of possible consolidation? And if we are looking at consolidation, does that mean that the charters are going to come in and be able to buy those empty public school buildings for help?
So I think SB1 deals with Union Township, or the Union schools, and I think that's where it ends today. Future discussions will go to different places. That Union school district has less than 300 in-person students. It's mainly become a online charter school. It's a very unique situation, and so I think hyper unique situations will have hyper unique kind of futures. I don't see. I mean, very few, because there are very, very few schools like that. I don't know another school like that, how they are set up. So the implications beyond that, I think we start and end with the union schools for now. So, other questions? Yes.
I would just like some clarification on that. You did the same with veterans question.
Yep.
Are we losing the exemption from gaining the 250, or are we getting?
So it's a great question, and we're working on it. So the goal was to make it two parts. One, expand how many disabled veterans were getting the tax benefit. So right now, they're horribly titled. There's the total disability tax benefit and the partial disability tax benefit. If I asked you which one got more in tax benefit, raise your hand if you think total gets more or partial gets more. Now you know the answer is partial because I kind of set up the statement. So total disability is at least you're either over 62 years old and have some form of disability, at least 10%, or your total disability under 62. Partial disability, you would have, I think, as minimum of 10%, and it came during war times. Right now, on partial disability, it's up to $24,950 of deductions. That's current law before SB1. And the total disability is $14,900 of deductions. On the total disability, there is a max of your house had to be less than $240,000 of assessed value. We did not cap the partial. And so there are disabled veterans today who do not receive a tax benefit because it wasn't during war and your home's assessed over 240. Well, your tax benefit is zero. You do not get a tax benefit for it. So what we did was we changed it to a credit and took away the caps or the cap on the total. And the idea is you could get up to $400, if you had the 250 partial plus the 150, it's up to 400, or you have 150 or 250.
Oh, yeah. With SB one.
Right now. So the idea is there on some of the math, on the low end and the high end, there are people who they're basically they're going slightly up. There's discussions now to go back and then remove the cap on the total. Because the big thing that we're trying to do is make it, if you are a disabled veteran, you should get a tax benefit. Just saying, hey, oh, your house is 200, you bought a house at $110,000 of assessed value, time's gone by, and next year you go from 238 assessed value to 242, 2,040, 2,400, 2,042,000, if I can say the number right, you lose your benefit. That's a horrific public policy. So we're trying to make sure that if you are a disabled veteran and you are a homeowner, you get a tax benefit. So we will probably see a switchback potentially on that. The goal is to expand the benefit. On some edges, there were some people who were actually with SB1 switch were making a little bit less, and that's not our goal. Other questions? I promise to not be as long-winded.
So with SB1, a lot of local services and governments are going to be losing funding, including schools. Now, I know with local government, they'll be able to recoup some of that with an income tax. Schools don't have that. Is there any plan to help these schools make up for that lost funding?
So just a correction. So from the next 2 years, you don't, there's, especially in our district area, they don't go down. They continue to go up. We just looked at fiscal year 28. It's hard to do the analysis of the assessed value. And so you are seeing some go down. That'll be reassessed next year. So we're not looking to see less of those services from the local government. We're not looking trying to get a drop in money going to schools in terms of going negative. Deb, do you have a question?
Is it true that there are avenues for local governments, including schools, to be able to raise
Yes.
the levy and to raise lids to be able to make up for loss?
Yes, there are.
If they want to try that?
Yes, there are.
Doesn't that have to be voted on? Doesn't that have to?
Yes. That has to be.
Taxpayer.
So some of it has to be. So some of it has to be to answer your question, and we'll try our best to answer questions by hand. That's totally fine. But you make up a good point of so who's making those decisions. So the right now today, the 3.75% local income tax that counties can provide, we are taking that from 3.75 to 2.9. The most an individual under SB1 can be taxed in a area is 2.9%. Let's say you live in Anderson, right? In the Anderson area, the county could tax you up to 1.7% under SB1, and then the city could add a 1.2 if they desired. It doesn't mean if we add a local income tax, it goes from 0 to 1.2 or 0 to 1.7. But those would be either the city council would vote for their 1.2 section, the county council would be that 1.7 section. If you live in the county, meaning you don't live in a municipality, the county would be able to be able to take you to 2.9. The county side, we divide up how they can do it. So they can't just say, hey, I want to have up to 2.9 or 2.9 on just county activities. 1.2 can be the county's general operations. 0.4 is for fire and EMS. 0.2 is for special districts, that's your libraries, solid waste districts, etc. And then 1.2 are the unique ones where if you live in an area that does not meet the 3,500 municipal minimum to have your own municipal lit, that the county could also do that there. I know that's a lot, but that's kind of the breakdown of the 1.7 and 2.9. And the county council and the city or town council would control the lit. Referendum would be the voters, yes. So.
Yeah, I hate to kind of reiterate a question. I just want to be sure I understood your response. So in terms of, for say Anderson specifically, you're saying from your understanding, you would not expect there to be a drop in the money, say, going into the school district or anything.
If you
Like, so the estimates that were someone's predicting like $4 million shortfall in 4 years or 3 years or whatever.
So
You just don't agree with those calculations or what are you saying?
So that's where fiscal year 28 comes into play.
Okay.
So if you look at fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26, the fiscal analysis on iga.in.gov website, search bar, put SB1 will pop up. At the latest fiscal note, it's a 17-page fiscal note. There's links on page, I think 14 or 15. It'll say net AV change from law. It's a 59-page document. You go to Madison County, And then, and now I can't recite
Yeah,
that beyond that, but from the Anderson goes up, I think $800,000 the first year, it goes up 1.7 million the next, but then when you get to fiscal year 28, that's where it's harder to tell where AV is going to go and other different tax implications. But those first 2 years, for sure, when we say for sure, obviously, natural disaster impacts AV, da da da.
To the best of your knowledge.
Yeah, best of the knowledge of the fiscal analysts, you go up about 800,000, and then I think I'm going to say 1.7 without the document in front of me. It's over $1 million. I know that.
It's like they're gaining that money.
From where they are today, they go up 800,000, and then from that 800,000 up, they go up another. Again, I'm saying 1.7 without the document in front of me. It might be 1.2. They go from up here now. So,
All right.
yes.
David Sargent, one of the rights of the people is the right to petition the government for redress of
Yes.
grievances.
Yes.
We have a problem with our local government
Yep.
as far as for the county and the city.
Mhm.
The county commissioners do not have a way for the people to address the county commissioners. It's not on their docket
Mhm.
where we can have a 10 or 15-minute time to
Yep.
address the commissioners. Also, the county council does have that at the end, but that does not give the people the right to talk about a bill that's before the either council or commission
Yep.
before they voted on it.
Yep.
This has been a very bad issue. Since I've been going to the meetings for the past year, when I've told people, especially at the commissioners meeting, well, hey, you better go up to the commissioner's administrative office and see if you can get permission to speak, because you don't have the right to talk about this. And they go, what are you talking about? I said, they don't have to listen to you. They can do what they want. And they were very upset with this. This is something I think that the state needs to address
Mhm.
as far as for county and local government, the right of the people to petition the government for redress of grievances before they pass a bill.
Mhm.
Needs to have time built into it by law.
I hear you. Yep. I think the outlier in the state house in terms of public comment. I was
House Bill 1338.
36.
Thursday. Yeah,
Yeah.
you signed against it.
Yeah, and I voted against it twice. I'm right there with you. It's let's be honest. I know half this room is not happy with me about something, right? And I say that joking, but also serious. I mean, also serious. I mean, like I don't want to say that and I'm like I'm joking that you have disagreements. You have legitimate disagreements, and that's. But yeah, I hear you.
Well, the main thing on that is by giving people a chance to state their position, they're having a chance to let you know how we feel, but they're also, it's like a pressure relief valve for people. They have a chance to be heard.
I do not
One way or
disagree.
the other, you're not going to please everybody, but at least they have a chance to be heard in a forum with our public officials.
Don't disagree at all. Next question. Yeah.
Cheryl McKinney, so to back up, Mr. Sargent, so what's our recourse? Is there something you can do to help us?
Theoretically, I mean, I need to look into the laws regarding because I know the school districts we require public comment. We could look at potentially adding that. I want to be very clear; that would not happen this session. We're down to like literally 8 days left.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, what can we do right now? Is there anything we can do?
Right now, in the next 8 days, I'm gonna be very clear with you now.
No, I know there's nothing you
Oh,
can do.
okay.
I'm sure.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
She's asking what we can do.
I think asking them to take public comment. I mean, I think you have. I know you have. I mean, you have. It's not been for lack of effort. I understand that.
So what other recourse do we have besides?
Ask your state representative to look into it. I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but if they are able to control their meetings and the school board is required to take public comment. Now, it's not. I want to be clear. It's not to your level. And I don't. It would be hard to get to the level where for every single vote, because you could get to the point where you can almost filibuster people. But I've been in a position where if you let people, I mean, you actually said it perfectly. Even if you just let people, I'm not going to use the word vent, but be heard, that it cools off the room sometimes. I don't disagree with you. I've been very kind of clear on my position on these kind of the public comment stuff. So, but I want to be clear. I mean, right now they control the meetings, and if I would ask them, and also when you're thinking about candidates that you support or things like that, those are all those decisions. But I would say that's kind of where you're at now at this point.
The council controls the meeting and not the people.
That's who you elected.
Isn't the council selected by the people to do the bidding?
Yeah.
That's
I'm
speaks
not,
for
saying,
you.
I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that in terms of the agenda is set by the members of the
Right.
councils.
And the people have no say in the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, the elected officials set the agenda, yes. Other questions?
I've got a question.
Yep.
Yes,
Terry.
on the criminalization of the homeless,
Mhm.
that part, I understand that that is in some type of committee right now.
A conference committee.
Okay, what are your feelings about it, that language being taken out there or removed completely? Because we need to have a public hearing on that. And the language and the bill sounds really good on paper, but I'm here, I would bet my life that that's not going to work the way it's written.
Mm.
The email you sent me answering my opposition to that stated that they were mandating the police to do this, that, and third, and these mandates, do they come with money or extra training? Because they're going to be dealing with mental illness, drug addicts, and people who just honestly need help or housing. We have empty buildings all over town, empty schools. We need to house people first and then get them to the proper agencies and help. This bill is not going to do that other than the jail part, and I am adamantly opposed against
I
that.
agree. So on the conference committee part, we're at the stage where we passed it on the House side. The conference committee is where, once they have a conference, I'm on the conference committee, so once they have their new language, I'll be able to say if I support the bill after it leaves the conference committee. Because this, in conference committee, any language of any bill, well, I'm gonna say something, I'm gonna caveat myself, can go into other bills. If it was a House bill, because the Senate bill, there's a little bit more restrictions, I will avoid all the Senate and House different rules. But my point is, I won't make until I know what the actual conference committee report says, which is the bill that we would vote on. It's hard to say where they will get to. I can't make a comment. Where we pass to the House version, what we did in that bill is a couple things. One, the bill doesn't go into place until July 1st, 2026. Why is that? Most bills will either be an emergency, which is the second the governor signs it, it's law. Or most often July 1st of that year. Why is it delayed a year? Why delay? We all know there's issues with mental health and homelessness and trauma and the sort. Why did we delay it a year? Because on the first page of the bill, it talks about how we are asking for support from the HHS and the U.S. Federal government for support and funding for employment support. Those with, and it's a whole list. It's on, I think, starts page 1, goes into page 2. Work support, mental illness, severe mental illness, addiction, trauma, and then there's 1 or 2 more. I'm forgetting. If we don't get that waiver, you will see, even if it's passed as is today, you will very likely see that stripped out. A lot of the no votes, even from our Democrat colleagues, because this bill was written, Justin Moed, who's a state representative out of Indianapolis, he actually had an amendment get into the bill, and we've been working with them, our Democrat colleagues, of how do we help these folks? Because what the bill is focused at is not the individual who is homeless and who's saying, I want help, I need help. What's happening is, and we all know it, I'm preaching to the choir here, is the individual who will not accept help at all. And under Indiana law today, there's 2 ways to force them to get, well, under Indiana law today, there's like 1 way to force them to get help. If the officer believes they are in an immediate emergency, and most of us can visualize what that looks like. An individual who seems to be going through a crisis in a public spot, that what that means can be different in different situations, but usually it's one of those things where you can see it and say that person is in severe crisis. In that, they're already in law today, it's been on the books for a long time, for at least I think less than a decade. The officer can engage and provide them and get them to services now. What happens though, if they're below that emergency standard, there is really nothing you can do of, come on, man, come on, please, right? I talked to someone that worked at United Way just yesterday on my drive into the State House, and she talked about her concern of the bill is, I have people sit in front of my desk every single day who need support, and we don't have enough resources. I said, I hear you. And I mentioned it about those who don't want support. She's like, yeah, I have people who sit outside our doors who won't leave, and we have a conversation. We sit out there with them and say, hey, you can sit here for a while, but eventually you're gonna need to go if you're not gonna walk in the door. And that's the person we're trying to help, is the person who's probably 50 steps away from sitting down on the table and saying, hey, I'm willing to be open to getting help. Because if the person goes inside that room, the first page of that bill comes into play of, we are asking for HHS help to fund them and get them services. If we don't get it, probably the rest of it's gone. If the person who's not walking in that door, who's not willing to get help, and we're not talking about the person that says, hey, I'm good. The person who has major mental health issues, addiction issues, or other trauma, former foster care kids who don't trust the system. And the state has done such tremendous work. They've extended how long we can help them. But that's what the goal of this bill is. Again, it doesn't go into place for a year, but we are trying to set the stage for how do we help those who are not willing to help themselves, who are in serious, serious concern. So,
Are you gonna have public hearings so that people can come and go in depth? Because I hear what you're saying, but in the real world, that is not going to work. Even though you're saying they're going to get help, then put them in a hospital or build a
But you don't have enough providers for all this.
so you will have
well, costly to put them in jail. And when you have police interaction with people who are going through these things, they're not gonna have a whole lot of patience with that. People gonna end up getting shot, killed behind supposedly getting help in the world that I live in. So that has to go. We got to start all over, and you got to have your people come down there and explain the whole story in the world we really live in.
Yeah, so that's why the bill's delayed a year, because we will have a full second session. Because let's say we get HHS funding. Well, that changes the whole conversation. Because then it's a matter of, hey, we have these services for you, and we can immediately look, the people that are sitting at that United Way desk, hey, we're getting you help. And now, this is not to United Way, it'd be other folks. How do we give wraparound services both to that person who will go through the door, and then we can talk more in depth of those who will not. That's why, let me be very clear. This is the rare bill, and we have two former legislators here. To delay a bill that's not on property taxes or something else is extremely rare. You do not see bills that we wait over a year and a half, and there's a reason. So I hear you. I completely agree. I would have voted no on the bill if it had immediately gone into play, 100%.
Well, the other part of it is with the federal layoffs, the tariffs, the stock market, and the rate of consumer buying, purchase power, we're headed in a downward turn right now. Do you really believe that you're gonna get any money from the federal government?
So the program, as far as I'm aware, has not been cut. Even if the administrative side they've had some layoffs. The actual program, as far as I'm aware, has not been. But again, that's why it's been delayed a year. Because if we don't get that funding, then there's different conversations. One, we probably would cancel all of it and return to the discussion in 2027 when you have a new economic forecast for a 2-year biennium budget. And frankly, you could make another request to the federal government, or we could look at potential grants from the state budget. If that cannot happen again, we go off again. And that's the real reason when we look at, this is a 18-month bill, and the rarity of that showcases we're trying to work together and work with people across the aisle.
I just wanted to also talk about that as well. And this is a clarification in that the bill is not funded.
There have been the author of the bill, people who've been working on it have all agreed that if you don't have the wraparound support, you can't do it. That's why.
So the legislation goes away?
We would vote, you would vote to over it. Those discussions have already been happening in the sense of so the reason why it was pushed back a year. So there was a different bill that handled things very differently in the first half of the session. You might have gotten emails about reaching out to us about it. And that, I think it went in, pretty sure it went in almost an emergency. The second governor passed it. There were no wraparound services, none of that. So this has been a discussion going on for a while. I do agree that part, the new language was not in a hearing, and that's why some of that going into second session, we can have those hearings. But the idea is putting that framework out of this is how this could look. No one, even the author of some of the amendments has stated, it's not there yet. But it puts a framework out and it allows us to show HHS of, hey, we are trying, one, we had a law now passed saying we are requesting of this. Now we have our Department of Health can reach out, apply, or sorry, the FSSA, I believe apply. And then, that it also showing, hey, this is the structure to do it. We will gladly take comments, and as many of you have emailed me, yourself as well, and gladly want to hear how to do it. What the step one is, and all of us know, this is a massive, massive issue. We need to address it. And I'll get your second. Yeah.
Is what kind of studies or best practices has the legislative looked at?
So in terms of the development of the policy, I wasn't on a committee, and so it was been working more with the legislators that have been. Jennifer Meltzer, who used to work at the Department of Health, who's now a state representative out of Shelby County. She has taken the real lead on it, and a lot of I relied on her in my discussions with her. The goal is not to criminalize. The goal is to allow an officer to get those individuals in the car who are unwilling to accept help. Because one of the parts that we haven't talked about the film is what triggers this, right? So an individual who is either on a location for 24 hours or 72 hours, depending on where it is. Officer, first step, they need to assess, in the law, assess, is this person having an emergency episode? And that's not the official title, but I'm going to use that word for now. If the answer to that is yes, this entire law, entire bill does not come into play. The entire bill, if they say, I'm assessing that this person is emergency at an emergency level, there's already an Indiana code, and this is what I was talking about a second ago, and you go through this steps of here. If they have realized, if they have assessed that they're not to that level, they tell them, hey, you have 24 hours, I will provide you services, where to go, and either it has to be a facility within 5 hours, or 5 miles, not 5 hours, 5 miles. They have to qualify for entry. So if you have an individual who's an alcoholic or an individual that uses illicit drugs or they abuse prescriptions, they would not qualify for the Christian Center. Therefore, that is off the map for that individual. If there's no location where they qualify within the 5 mile radius, this bill does not go into play. They can then make calls. I'll get to you next. They can make calls. No, you're gonna.
I'm hearing all this explanation, but what I'm not hearing is other communities that have done this and had positive outcomes that now Indiana is saying, yes, let's do this too, because it's been so successful in wherever.
I can't speak to specifics of this exact steps. I know other states have applied for HHS funding in terms of trying to intervene, but in terms of that, I'm not. If you have other locations that have not used this model, I know you don't agree with this model beside us. I'm saying if there's other states that have models that you're interested in, happy to look at it. A lot of what we're trying to do is set the table of we need to do something, and this is where we can get to a level of okay, this is the step of how you got to do it. And I've said it before.
Some things were considered.
What was that?
Were any other somethings considered?
Yeah,
like
there
we
were.
said we had to do something, so we did this. But what other? Like, I just can't understand how this became the best idea that could come out of the legislators.
In terms, it's more in the sense of how do we get an individual? So right now, under civil law, you cannot get a person into, you cannot force a person to take care, right? So if you saw an individual say, hey, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, please, we have the resources right here. We'll pay for all of it. We'll get you on Medicaid, it'll give you wraparound services. If the person says no, there's no civil remedy unless they're an emergency under Indiana law, none, right? And what happens is there are some who want support. That's that's half the battle. But if they don't, what do we do? And that's where, it's a class, the reason the Class C misdemeanor is no one's going to charge it, but it allows them to get into the process, and it can be sent to problem-solving court. That's one of the last parts of the bill and they could work to that. Another thing we're going to try to work on next year is so that it wouldn't even be on their legal record.
Last question. So why the need then to force local municipalities to enforce this? I mean, like if you're You said something that triggered that question, like that we wouldn't have to enforce it, but from my understanding,
Oh.
the city of Anderson has to enforce this or else we'll be in trouble. Yeah.
It's more, so it's in terms of if an individual does not meet the threshold, because what we don't want to be in a situation is, hey, you can go to the Christian center, but they drink, they're, I don't want to say they're alcoholic, but they drink alcohol and they, or they do lots of drugs, or, you know, whatever, you know. They don't qualify. Well, now it's the idea and what we're trying, I think it's, to your question, I think it's a showcase. We're trying to showcase this isn't trying to be punitive. Because if you don't.
It's
qualify-
punitive.
I
It's punitive.
I understand.
There's no,
It's
I
punitive.
understand.
yeah.
That's,
Anyway,
that's why we're giving 18 months. I fully hear you. The idea of putting people in jail for 30 days and doing that, I fully agree. That's why there will be a whole other session and it will be a major issue during that. But the idea is if we need to showcase to HHS, get an application in and show them HHS says, well, hey, you're asking for funding for this. Well, those who want it, okay, good. We also want to have a process to help those who are resisting, because those who are in the thralls of addiction, those who are in a not emergency mental crisis, but in a mental crisis, those who have long-term schizophrenia and other conditions, many of them won't accept help, and many of them don't know that something's wrong, and many of them don't trust individuals. There's so many reasons why. And so the question is, how do we get the threshold? Because that was the biggest discussion of why are we bringing the criminal side in? Why can't we just use a civil, have a civil, a code citation? Code citation is just a civil penalty of usually money. I can't force this person to get help. So there could be discussions of, do we create this like intermediary where it's not criminal, but like the police can engage? We could talk about those have been in discussion. But the idea was, we need to get the HHS component to it. We need to show HHS that we are willing to work with those who are unable or undesired to do or lack the desire to engage it. But we are far from over. And that's what I keep saying. There's a whole other session. And if it does not get there, with strong confidence, we would barely be straight the entire time. I'm gonna go back to you first. And then I told Terry I'd go to her. Is it related to this or is it?
no, you go ahead.
No, actually, the gentleman in the back, is it Terry's your question?
Well, I mean,
Is the gentleman in the back, sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna be very candid with you, just from what I'm hearing on this homeless thing. Because this is the only way I know how to be.
Yeah.
'Cause I was brought up in a family that was
Yep.
taught that right from wrong, and you better do it, And so you as a Republican are sitting here, and what I'm hearing, I know as a Republican, you believe in the right, what you call right to life, it's actually right to birth. But when these kids are forcing these women to have children that know before they even give birth to that child that it's going to be homeless or it's not going to be able to be fed, it's not going to be able to clothe or shelter. Those are the three basic needs: food, clothing, and shelter. And yet you and the Republican Party, you're sitting here saying that you're going to treat them as criminals.
I never said that.
Basically,
But let's be clear, I never said that.
you're jailing them for being homeless. You're forcing them to be born. And then, you should be up there saying, we need to build shelters. We have to have shelters. Don't just sit there and say, we're gonna fight and make them be born and then not provide shelter for them. We're gonna jail them. That doesn't make an ounce of sense to me. It angers me.
I hear you. So the first page of the bill, they request funding for those facilities, for those things. And that's why it is so important on that step one, because if that doesn't happen, it changes the whole conversation. And that's where we're making the request to HHS. And if the answer to that, if the answer we apply, they say no, then we have to go back to the drawing board on the entire thing. This is not a short-term issue. It is a long-term issue. We know that. And so, Terry, next question.
So I want to go back to a couple of things that you said, because I've got to take issue with it. I'm looking at the fiscal note. Anderson Community Schools is set to lose $1.1 million in 2026, $1.3 million in 2027, and $1.072 million in twenty
So
twenty.
you're looking at the net from current law.
From where they anticipated, because they had built plans. They've done their referendum, they're not likely to go back for another one at this point. And they cannot raise lit taxes, the school districts cannot raise extra money. On top of that.
Don't worry, the county
Madison
does easily.
County,
The county does easily.
as a government, is gonna lose from where they currently are. $3.7 million this year, $3.3 million next year, and $17 million in 2028.
Yep.
All the while, we're piling on, saying, now you've got to have more law enforcement. We're getting ready to cap HIP, and the numbers are going to be drastically reduced, put in work requirements and everything else, except for disabled, blind, disabled,
Yep.
handicapped. In what world is it right at this point to say we're going to cap property taxes for only 2/3 of the population, 2/3 of homeowners, and it's going to benefit the most wealthy families, wealthy homes, and we're going to raise everybody else's taxes from the current, we were trying to get rid of income tax, and now they can do at a total countywide level 4.1%. How does it work? The math doesn't add up.
So there's a couple corrections. Let's go backwards. So first off, the answer of could they go the lit up to 4.1? That is incorrect. But most of the lit could do is 0.2 is 2.9. You want to look on page 170, starting one page 172 and go on page 173 on the bill. So the most that the municipal can do is, so I think it's one page 172, and I could be wrong with the rule that it's around that section. The most that the local municipality can do is up to 1.2. The county on top of that can do up to 1.7. Those two combined is 2.9. If you're in a if you're not in a municipality, you're again the county, as most people colloquially say it, you can go up to 2.9, and all of that from the county. You cannot go above 2.9. I'll be very clear about that. Beyond that, in terms of the fiscal note you're looking at, as I've said with multiple times, when you get to fiscal year 28, it's hard to see what the AV growth is. Also, though, that also includes the fact that the property tax 1% property tax is the PS lit goes away, which they can bring back, and the county council can have that vote. If you have that vote and bring that 1% back, that automatically closes the margin, and it doesn't take account for the AV growth that we're seeing in Pendleton, Fall Creek, Eagles, and Green, and then so other growth. So your 28 number lacks, like again, that lit number that is currently in there, but 2 does not account for that AV growth. Beyond that, in terms of you're saying that it loses this much each year, they're still going. If you look on if you go on the other tab in that, because you're on the fiscal note, if you go back, hit the blue link right below it, they are still going up year over year. And the schools can go to referendum, and we're making it so they can do it in the spring, do it in the fall, have more voters do it, and make those decisions.
Which is more more money that taxpayers have to pay.
Income
Income tax now, increased school referendums, and increased needs for services at the local level.
It's called max the tax in Indiana.
Another part is you said that 2/3 of
What it is.
would, it's not
That's
2/3,
from-
it's 2/3 of the supplemental, but it's not 2/3 of individuals. It's 2/3 on the. So
2/3 of homeowners in the state of Indiana.
so that's next year. So 2/3 of Hoosier will go down. So the 2020 from the 2025 bill, the 20 of taxpayers' bills will go down. 90% plus will see a decrease from then if we had done nothing. So you're correct. 2/3 of tax will pay less. Then also as we go years, they will the supplemental income supplemental property tax. The supplemental deduction will go up to 2/3. That you said 2/3. We were talking about 2 separate 2/3. I was talking about the 2/3 supplemental deduction. Already.
So I just want to double check. So whenever you said, like you just said, the number of homeowners, their taxes would go down earlier, you talked about farms taxes going down. In that case, you're talking about going down compared to what they would be expected to pay under current law.
That's the last third. So the 2/3, the number will be like.
It will be a lower number.
It'll be a lower number.
Okay.
Now, so 2/3 of Hoosiers, whatever your bill you got last week, Fast forward 12 months, it'll be less. What that number is less depends on where you live and the local rates of the property tax rates, and that is a very, literally almost township by township.
Right, I looked at the bill. Yeah.
Yeah. And I apologize, I'm not nice.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Like,
So yeah,
Really?
so that last going 66% in April 25. It's 90% plus that they will pay less in April 26 than if nothing had happened. It's almost
Right, but that's what Terry was just saying, like, that's the comparison she was doing. So it seems like whenever you're talking about the amount the taxpayers will save, you want to use compared to the status quo, but when she compares to the status quo, we don't want to do that, we want to look at something, I mean,
I think we're talking about it. If we did nothing, that last third would be higher. It'd be much higher. What we're doing, we are lowering their taxes than from what it would.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we agree.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is there, and maybe if I misunderstood, I apologize, Terry, is saying that only 2/3 of taxpayers in general we're going to get support long term. And I apologize for that.
well, no, I just, if we're gonna talk about the loss compared to today's, then we should talk about the gains or, you know, the reduction in taxes compared to today.
Yeah.
Not compared to kind of the status quo, like, we should just be using the same.
I think I
Yeah.
go along. So if I don't.
Okay.
follow them. Even waiting, I apologize. Even waiting.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and keep this ramped up a little bit, but we'll see. And I'll let her talk first. My daughter wanted to say something.
I am upset about the homelessness as criminals, and because I actually went to the community Episcopal Church today to help out the community lunch, as I always do, to help the homeless. And I heard about that from my grandma when we were serving them, and I was very upset because they're really nice people. They're
They're
really
very
nice
nice
people. They're always kind. They always wave. They're always like nice to us. They ask us how our day was. They're nice people.
Thank you.
So, yeah. First up, a question of clarification about the homelessness bill. It sounded like you were saying that if the wraparound services in the first part of the bill are not met in next year's plan, then the whole bill would just die and you go back to the drawing board, because it feels like everything is changing from day to day to day. There is so much trust that is eroded, especially after what happened with the State House on Monday with SB1, when everybody passed it basically 12:18 a.m. in the morning after the teachers have been there all day, taking a personal day to try and get their voice heard. And so it's really hard to trust that, oh yeah, don't worry guys, we've got it. Next year, we'll have time to plan all of this, when that's not been happening. There's not been transparency. There's not been a guarantee for voters. Now, I'm not saying that a guarantee for voters is still going to be enough, because everything that happens, especially state and federal at this point, feels like a mad lib of my worst nightmares every 30 seconds, to be very frank. I'm the director of the Anderson Education Foundation. This past grant cycle, we had triple the amount of grant requests from teachers, afraid of trying to figure out where they're gonna get funding for things for, and these are just basic things. We provide school supplies nonstop for the teachers because they are buying it out of their own pockets. And so it is really frustrating when I hear a state representative say, do more with less. You guys have had a couple of good years. Teachers have not had a couple of good years. They had COVID, and then they're trying to figure out how to do things working from home on the screen, et cetera, et cetera. Then they get in. Now we have COVID loss. All the COVID dollars are gone. Federally, $2 million from the federal government is promised to the schools and the district. We're already in contracts to spend that money out. And they've said, oh, actually, never mind. We already said we were going to give this to you, but we're not. We're now on the hook for those $2 million that we're already in the middle of contracts with. So it feels really frustrating to hear any politician say, don't worry, we've got this. There's no stability. And that's across, with the Doge, they're cutting so many things across. And I'm not saying Doge is
at the state level, but I've heard state representatives say, oh, we need Doge in Indiana too. So I'm really frustrated. I'd like to hear more. If this is not met in this condition, we will kill the bill. And I'm just something.
Yeah.
I would also like to hear more from you as far as how, there's always a cost to cuts, right? Like if you're taking out, oh, we're saving property taxes. I actually don't want the savings because if you cut something, it's going to cut services. I want a better community. I want my kids to be able to be in schools where they can graduate, where their teachers don't have to pay for everything out of their own pocket, where they can afford to go on field trips, and we're not having to piecemeal from my fundraising, which again, you guys are making my job super hard because I'm trying to figure out how to fund all these things that everybody keeps ripping away from teachers in schools. I'm done with it. I'm real frustrated. I'm having sleepless nights, which I'm hoping you are too, at some level, because there's so many people. I have teachers crying, trying to figure out how this is gonna work out. And I don't trust that it's going to work out. So I don't know if that's a question so much as far as where are the guarantees built in?
Yep.
How can we figure out what led to your decision to make those cuts based on what we're giving up for that?
So I'll go through all of it. So first off, I've never said that I understand.
I didn't say.
I know, but you know that, I know that, but not everyone, not the whole.
Fair.
I apologize. I'm not trying to, if
Got it.
I ever give explanation, I'm not trying to antagonize, but not everyone might not know the background of everything. And I don't want it to be, hey, we're having a conversation, but the rest of the room's like, what in the hell are they talking about?
Fair.
So I'll be very clear. She is not suggesting I said anything, but I did not say those things. I'll be very good at that. In terms of the 197, it's so when I say it's the bill doesn't go into play, and the individual side with the individual where if the radius and all those things and they don't qualify, that literally is the bill, right? And if they are an emergency part, that's in the bill. What I'm talking about is there's been open discussions. The bill passed 5240 in the House. It's in conference committee. The bill has actually not become law yet at all. And we will see where it gets to, because the House has to vote again and the Senate has to vote again. And at a 52 vote, that is 52 vote, 52 vote passage in the last like half decade. That's probably happened a dozen times. And that's a guesstimation. But just to show you, out of 1,500 bills filed, not all those will get votes on the House floor. Half a dozen, 1,500 times 5, half a dozen times it's happened. That showcases this is an issue that we're really working through it. So in terms of like legally, if we don't get that, does the rest go away? No, what I'm saying is we can go back and then remove it. There have been bills many a time.
Remove the misdemeanor, can we be clear? Are we removing the misdemeanor?
Yeah, yeah. We would literally like if that does not happen, we will try to get next steps of what it is. In terms of how would that misdemeanor thing, I don't know the answer to that question, but we're trying to get a legal way to get them in the car. If we need to avoid the misdemeanor, whatever, that's what we're going to attempt. I can't make a promises on the foot on the ground step part. I don't know. But what I'm saying is if you don't get HHS funding, the entire conversation changes. The reason you saw that bill die in the first half was because they said, hey, that's great. You want to actually that's great. You don't want them, on the street. But what are you doing? You're removing them for what, 72 hours? That's, or a week, they'll be right back. That's not helping anything. That's not helping them, right? And so that's why this is one of those things where it's open discussions. Unlike our federal, and I'm gonna get back here. Unlike our federal colleagues where you have bills that pop up on like Wednesday night and they vote Thursday. You see how the sausage is made in these committee hearings. They have open discussions. You can go on the iga.in.gov website and watch the committee hearings. And there are people on both sides of the aisle, especially on these kind of bills, where they're trying to help. I mean, the person that came up with this amendment worked for the Department of Health. You take a service for that. I mean, she's trying to help individuals and trying to get there. Back to your question. If I forgot something, I apologize.
I'll get back to you.
In terms of I'd be willing to pay for it. We literally are making it the law where now you can actually put your income into it. Because one of the big concerns about property tax is fixed incomes individuals. Property tax doesn't care about it. Your assessment went up, property tax doesn't care, you got fired, right? Property tax always will go up. Now, there's exceptions that if you're over 65 and it changes your income level. But my point though is you are allowed to do a local income tax and you go to the city council or the county council and say, hey, I'm hoping we have X, Y, and Z, and I'm willing to pay for it. And that's what,
Individual would do that?
I mean, no, meaning is in like the county council could vote for individual local income tax. Sorry for that, sorry. But meaning, but you could, I mean, you could,
Yeah,
to the rest of your government, reach out to your county council, reach out to your mayor, or if you're not.
Well, okay, I'll work on that.
I will refrain from
Yeah.
piggybacking on that. Tammy.
So Tammy Tatum, and I just want to, say that I absolutely do not like the criminal component of SB 197. And then I guess I'm trying to understand, are the police going to be mental health professionals now? I mean, is there because you said that obviously they're the ones called on the scene. They have to assess. Do they know what they're assessing?
So-
And is someone going to help them? So, I mean, I'm kind of confused.
So under
with all of
current
that.
law today, not new law, under current law enforcement officers are trained and they have to make that assessment. If there's already an Indiana code that if an officer believes someone's in, I'm gonna, again, I say emergency episode in SB 197, the actual terminology is right there. It goes to an already set law that's been in the books. So we're not asking them to do something they've never done before, but what we're doing is making sure you're not separating out and having like, well, if they want to do it this way, they can do it this way. If they want to do it this way, they can do it this way. No. It's 1, 2. If it's 1, which is current law today before SB 197 ever is considered, they have to go that way. They cannot choose to say, well, I don't think he or she meets these. I'm gonna go this way. No. If they meet this, you must go.
Wait a minute here. Now, I do years of training for this stuff.
Yep.
And you're telling me that a police officer is going to be able to diagnose whether this person is mentally not capable or not. And I've just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my training and education. I mean, you're asking them to diagnose somebody here.
We're trying to showcase signs of the extreme level. That's why it's.
But how do they get to that training? I mean, like I have to pass board certifications in order to be able, I mean, like to put somebody on a 72-hour hold. I mean, there's like this is a big deal.
So the person that would be making that decision of like a 72-hour hold or other things, that's a medical professional. There are steps, and I will say this, I do not know off the top of my head. If you go to the code site in SB 197, you can click it and go to the other one, and then they're not making again, this part's already in law. This is not new. Where they are saying there are indicators that they are seeing that that doesn't mean, oh, this indicator means schizophrenia. This indicator means da 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 da. This is an indicator that there's an individual who is meeting some type of category of they're making threats to themselves or others. They're saying,
So
yeah.
we're already at full capacity. Like I can't get, I have an 8-year-old right now that I need into counseling. I sent it over to Riley. They are denying it. They have nothing for at least a year. I have nowhere to send these kids. I have nowhere to send adults. Where are you going to come up with all
That's
this?
where July 1st, 2026, if we're not given HHS funding, we have to completely relook at this whole thing.
So why worry the public?
Because if we don't make.
We don't have a plan.
If we don't make an application to HHS and don't get that funding, it changes the whole conversation. And so we have to show HHS, okay, we give you this funding for an individual who.
So what's the backup plan?
The backup plan is if we don't get the funding from now until January 1st or early in session, you will likely see a law that would strike it. That's been openly discussed.
So there's no plan.
Will you
Okay.
author
It's gonna. I'd be happy to co-author. Those who are the leading folks on these issues, on mental health and mental crises, there's folks who have been and served at different like mental health consultants or there's actually an LCSW that's on as a legislator. I would argue that the LCSW that's a social worker that has a master's equivalent. They would likely be better equipped to talk about that because they've been trained in it I mean, she's.
I guess what I'm asking is, will you commit to us that you are gonna be a part of this?
Yeah,
You would-
I'd be supportive of, yeah.
You are.
Well, I would, if there's an opening, I would be happily co-author. You only have 3 max co-authors. So I always tell folks, you can't promise to be a co-author because you get 3 of mine in front of you. The fourth person, the fourth person doesn't become a co-author. So in terms of if they author it and they say, hey, would you want to be on it? Yes. But if they author it and they say, hey, we got 3 others on it, I can't add myself. So, but would I be supportive of it? Yes, 100%. I'm gonna go, which one of you is first?
Hi there, Sherilyn Morning. First, I actually just want to say thank you for having this. And I think if we could sit down over coffee, I think we would disagree about a lot of things. But I'm really grateful that you're here actually engaging with us because we all know there's a lot of folks across the state and nation that are refusing to do that. And even in our own state. So thank you for joining us this evening and for giving us the room. I really appreciate that. I have a statement and then kind of a question. Are you familiar with Housing First as a model for addressing homelessness? Okay.
As a general model.
Sure, absolutely, awesome. I would like to propose and suggest and beseech you that anything that you and our state legislature do to address homelessness, right, this problem, these people.
No, they're not.
No, I'm using quotes, right, because this is it's a problem we have to address, right, is why it's in front of us. I would just like to suggest that what we see in research is that Housing First addresses the problems. And it then does not require our law enforcement to do something they're not equipped to do. Our law enforcement has a role. It's to uphold law. It is not to address things like mental health, like unhoused neighbors. So I would just like to say, at whatever point any of this moves forward and anything that you do on behalf of Hoosiers, I would like to ask you to use that model. The other question that I have is related to, I appreciate again that this bill is not going into effect until next year. Can you tell me any other bills where that has happened, where it's been passed like this and not gone into effect and then actually was dismissed or whatever the word was?
I opted, because it is so rare, I could not just list off the top of my head. You have a comment?
So I would just say to Maria's point,
Yes, I do.
it is really concerning that that's kind of the back door. That if it's not normal, again, sorry, my quotes, if it's not normal for a bill to then kind of die or be voted off the books 18 months later, I'm really concerned that this is just for show, that this bill that is about, even if you don't want it to criminalize, it will criminalize people who are already up against everything. We have an affordable housing shortage in this community and across the nation. How are we going to house folks if there's not even enough housing for people who aren't actively on the street right now?
I'm gonna answer that question. You have a bill?
A question and.
Oh, yeah, let me, it's okay, I can answer. I thought you had a bill that you then do.
Well, it's ties right in with this.
Oh, well, yes, I want to make sure I can answer it. So first off, if you want to meet, let's meet. I didn't bring all my cards.
I got you.
But
We probably disagree about a lot,
No,
and that's okay, but I'm glad we
but
see
I mean,
it tonight.
Angie has my number and like, I'm being serious. Like, let's seriously meet down. By the end of the meeting, I'll give out my cell phone. I'll give you the time to put out your phones and put my information in. But I'm serious. Let's meet. In terms of, I cannot, to answer your question, I could go probably find, I could probably ask our policy staff for examples. I think what you're reading, that's
But it's not common, right? This
it's
is not
not,
a common practice.
it is not a common,
Later to be voted away.
it's not a common practice to put a delayed timestamp in general, besides like taxing issue, like we're talking about normal policies. When you get into like budgets, there's actually, that's a whole different conversation. When you're talking about like public policy, it is rare to even have a delayed timetable. I could, I'll give you my contact information. I'll ask my policy office, give me like 2 weeks for at the end of session, but I can actually figure it out. There are examples, because there's a common phrase in the state house. Well, this is just a tweak on last year. This is just we're shoring up, which AKA means we didn't. And we're talking about like things that are benign, right? Like we created this thing that happens common. But reach out. I'll have to give you the exact answer. In terms, he said something else. I feel like I'm not answering it. I feel like it was.
Housing first was the other thing.
Okay, so so housing discussion. So one, happy to sit down on that. We actually literally just passed a bill today, House Bill 1005, which is this is very rare. That also goes with House Bill 1005 of 2 years ago. The author asked to have the same number, so it was easier to discuss it. Where we are talking about funding of local units of government to have affordable housing. And some of these bills are not in silos, right? Sometimes you hear about some bills, there might be 4 or 5 bills on one subject that are all coming in the session. And so, yes, we're trying to address the housing part. We're trying to hit the childcare part. Senate Bill 459 that I'm a co-sponsor on. How are we trying to make it so childcare is cheaper? You talk about expenses for working families, things like that. It's a wraparound on a lot of these bills that they all play a part because all these bills do. Here's the Indiana code. This bill impacts here. Sometimes it does multiple, but that's.
No, I appreciate that. And right for the education cuts, one of the things that I see is we'll have more children not graduating, not getting the education they need, which again, education is an indicator of poverty and other complicating issues, right? And so again, I appreciate your acknowledgement that these things are connected, that we can't address one thing without addressing the others. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, David Sargent, back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was an emergency medical technician. Transported more than a few patients to LaRue Carter or to Richmond. With these patients, they had mental issues that required either long-term or short-term institutionalization. Unfortunately, the state closed down all the state mental hospitals. Is there a working group to look at this? Because these are the homeless that are falling
There's still some.
cracks, everything that I've heard here tonight. And that is the ones that have the hardest issue to be dealt with either in the jails or out in the public because they cannot think in a reasonable fashion. Those are the ones that really need to be taken care of first to reduce the pressure on every other social service to be able to handle the people that are of conscious mind where they can make their own decisions. But the ones that need institutionalization, they're falling through the cracks. There's nowhere to put them. Jail's not the place for these people.
So there are still some facilities. I know that the era there is an era gone by where it's very different. There have been some discussions on the terminology is very different nowadays. There's residential facilities. The old model of there are still state hospitals, but state hospitals of some of the films where we can all visualize what I'm talking about.
Right.
We need to be very clear. There were massive infringes on people's rights, health decisions. There's a lack of trust within the health community with going to that model. And there have been documentaries, I think it's either Pennsylvania or New Jersey. I'm going to say Pennsylvania if you're wrong, someone correct me. The professionals, I am going to generalize, the professionals in the field really argue against that model because it becomes, they're out of sight, out of mind. And sometimes they get much worse. Socialization, a lot of them they isolated, right? They escalated in terms of their issues. So that now a big model is residential care for those who have the most challenging either substance abuse or mental health crisis. The next level, we want people to be in communities, and we want them to be in local communities. And this is going to be it's a controversial statement, but I think I'll try to show where I was trying to go here. When they took away work requirements, they thought, hey, people didn't want to work. They actually saw the mental health of the patients get worse. And then that's when you saw, hey, let's train them in the community. Try to have people, maybe they need assistance. And actually on Senate Bill 197, part of the HHS waiver is is employment support. There might be an individual who, frankly, because if they have some of these conditions, a 9 to 5, 5 days a week ain't gonna do it, right? But we want to get them, can you do half a week? Can you do half a day? And so to answer your question, there are still some of these facilities that is, but by and large, not the industry standard or industry kind of, they found them to be less
It's
efficient.
the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah. So, yes.
So, first I wanted to piggyback on what Sherilyn said, and not only do I appreciate you being here, but you're giving very thoughtful answers. And even though we may not agree with it, it's clear you've thought about this. You aren't up there just trying to get like a talking point or whatever. Like, I really appreciate the depth you're going into in these answers. But so I don't know a ton about this homeless bill. This is my first hearing. But you said if the funding from HHS isn't approved, you guys are then gonna have a vote to like cancel the bill. And, okay.
I give caveat.
Yeah.
I'm showing you behind the scenes a little bit here.
Yeah.
Okay, so like the bit, it's not in a, hey, if this isn't funded, we're gonna have a vote by day. I'm taking you behind the scenes of where these discussions are. I just give, because I understand, like, I read the bill and I don't see what you're talking
No,
about.
well,
Okay.
that's literally my question is, could you not write that into the bill? Could you not say if the HHS money is not approved pursuant to clause 1 by this date, then the rest of this bill is null and void as of this date?
I actually will look, yes, you can do those things. I have a good memory, but I don't have a what's it called memory? Photographic memory. There might be some of that language somewhat already in there. But yeah, there's a lot. We act now in the Indiana State Constitution, we do limit our ability to do that sometimes, but there's often a, if this doesn't happen.
Okay, just go to that lack of trust. Like, I don't trust that if you make homelessness illegal, that a year from now or 18 months from now, the Senate that's there will actually vote to undo that, you know?
I agree. I'm sorry, I promise you next time.
I'll keep it brief. So with the homeless bill, ultimately, we talked about how it's up to the officer to see, or, you know, obviously there's homeless people who are looking for help and some that don't want help at all. Just to clarify, is it the officer's discretion what they're dealing with?
So I would say that is the step before, because if someone's already trying to get assistance of help, I can't say as clearly the law doesn't go into play, but you're almost in a different discussion. Because to trigger the law is an individual who is not engaging and not accepting the help. So if they say, I accept the help, the rest of us like go on. So it's the person that says, I don't want help. Then they need to see, okay, hey, is this person emergency or they're not? And then it starts going. If you want, I can follow up with you. I can give you the language if you want. All right. Sorry.
Hi, I'd like to say as a downtown business owner, we've had many homeless people come into the building, sit outside. And your sweet daughter, who has, those are the ones that want help. Those are the ones that are seeking. And I've had people that I've had to ask move from the sidewalk because customers are coming in and they're very sweet and they move away. But we've had 2 individuals and one last week that he was out there on Sunday and we had a bridal shower inside and we could see him on the ring. He was eating out there at a table, but we had a lot of young ladies in there and I didn't know him and I didn't know if he would be appropriate. So I drove my car down there and asked him if I said, hey, we've got an event going on. I don't mind if you eat out here at the tables, but when we've got something going on, you know, I really do need you to leave because they're going to come out here and take pictures at the tables and stuff. Packed up his stuff. He was very nice, but then he came back and he just kept walking around the building. And then he came inside and I, you know, actually our dishwasher panicked and he goes, oh my gosh, he's coming in. I'm going to lock the door. And I was like, no, don't lock the door. It's okay. So I opened the door and I said, well, come on in, have a seat. Would you like to dine with us? Would you like to take it to go? He said, well, I'm going to eat in here. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that someone is a little unwavering. They're a little uneasy. And maybe it was the trust factor that he didn't have with us coming into our building. So he walked around the building and he sat down and he ordered. And then he said really crazy stuff. He said that anyone that drives a black vehicle has a gun in it and they're wanting to shoot him. And then he started pulling up his shirt, showing me where he had a wound from something. So I knew he was delusional, okay? He wanted coffee and he wanted quiche and I think a scone. So we served that to him and he kept putting tea bags. And I said, hey, I just want to let you know, you're going to be charged for every tea bag. He goes, oh gosh, I can't pay for that. I said, well, it's okay. We're only going to charge you for 2. He was putting dry tea bags in his cup that already had tea bags in it. So he sat there and then the server came and told me and she said, he's saying some pretty crazy things. I'm not going to repeat that because we've had a child in the room.
And I said, okay, well, and he was there for probably about 45 minutes. So I called the police and I said, I don't want you to do anything. I think your presence here will motivate him to leave, because then he was getting loud and he was using inappropriate language, and we had a table of ladies in there dining. That didn't bother him until the police walked in, and then they knew him. And just again, the presence of the police being there, he left. But he didn't seem threatening, but he seemed unstable. And unstable people sometimes make decisions that are not good. So I think this is the kind of guy that would never, ever want help, because he doesn't know that he needs help. He's delusional. He's the kind of guy that isn't going to seek help or want it. So he's the kind of guy that if this would go through, and if it is a good Health and Human Services benefit, that you pull health and. So I understand it, because there are homeless, I mean, I've worked at the Christian Center and served meals. Those people want help. This guy does not want help. He does not think there's anything wrong with him, and he could be dangerous. About a week later, which was, I think, last weekend, there was an incident where he got volatile with somebody. So had the police been able to determine that this guy does not want help, he has said many inappropriate things, he's acted in this way. We've got this bill, we've got Health and Human Services, maybe it's a facility that he can go to and get counseling. That's what I'm hoping that will come from that, but I understand there are the homeless people that want help and they seek it. They just don't have any support system. And then there's the homeless like this gentleman and another one that was in, I don't know, 2 months after we opened, who was very threatening to everybody. But the police really, they couldn't do anything.
So thank you for your story.
I get it, and I've experienced it, so I think I'm comprehending what this would do.
So thank you for your story. I will say, even in that case, the bill does not go into play. He was not there for 24 hours. So even in that situation, now obviously you're in a building that's owned by a private individual. If and you didn't say anything illegal happened. I didn't hear anything illegal happen if you were to stay there. Obviously, you need to trespass. There are current laws you could look into to address it. But I want to be clear. You might ask, hey, what does 197 do to that? I will say the black SUV thing. I don't know. I don't know the
Just a black vehicle, wasn't it?
Yeah,
A black vehicle, they've got a gun, they want to shoot.
I would have to see, and this is where I just don't have a photographic memory. The statements of violence and concern about himself might, and this is where I don't have it in front of me, get you in category 1. But if let's remove that statement from that entire conversation, SB 97 is nowhere near. It hasn't even been triggered because he has to be there for 24 hours. And now again, there's still our current resources, but I just wanted to show. I don't want people to think, oh, this individual is sitting there for 20 minutes. I'm gonna her next on with you. 20 minutes. It's still we are talking about a long tenured time.
So I have 2 questions from 2 viewers. So hopefully they make sense to you. Just going to read.
Yeah.
Will you fight the language in the budget that undermines our elected state treasurer's authority over Trust Indiana and the investment of local funds?
I will with the second question.
That's the first one. And then the second one is, in a year where we've been told local government funding has to be prioritized over real relief for homeowners, will you fight the language inserted into the state budget, which undermines the authority of the state treasurer over Trust Indiana and lets a board of bankers control the investment of local government funds, potentially cheating Hoosiers and local governments out of millions more in revenue that can be generated?
So those not the same exact question.
Not to change subjects on everybody, but
I will answer. Is there any other questions about anything we talk about currently?
Can I say something? I just wanted to finish comment.
Yeah, I'll come back.
That's fine.
I think my point, and I probably didn't make it good, is that had this gentleman, let's say he did stay there 24 hours and they could have gotten him help. He wouldn't have turned around a week later and been in a volatile situation and then be arrested. Like, it's a preventative measure, I hope, that would also prevent these people that are more than likely mentally unstable, where they get help, and then it prevents them from actually doing something that could get them arrested on a criminal charge that would be a lot greater than just getting something that Health and Human Services. So that's all I
No,
want.
I think, thank you for that. I think we all understood. I just wanted, because there's questions of what does this bill do? I just wanted to like, because an actual example was given, I wanted to give people aware of what this bill does. That's all I'm just trying to say.
Yes.
Are there any other questions?
So really bad, just that-
Yes, I apologize, Mr. I apologize.
It's okay, no, you're good. So I hope, I.
That's fine.
Some of this clearly, so, one piece, so House Bill 1662 was the one that was the criminalization of homelessness initially, right? And then that died.
Yeah.
It died in the House. They didn't read it in the final day that all the House was gonna vote. It didn't go through. Then it kind of secretly was added, obviously not secretly, because many of us tracked that, and many organizations did. When it was 1662 and there was a hearing on the misdemeanor piece and all of that, what I was informed, and you can fact check me, you can look back at recordings, I may be a little off on numbers, but about 20 either entities or people testified in that hearing. 19 of them were against it. One was for it, and it was the Cicero Institute, which is a lobbying group from Texas trying to push these bills. So I think we need to be very frank and clear about who is showing up in person, with phone calls, with letters, and I so appreciate. I text you, I call you, right? Maybe in inconvenient times, so try to keep it in business hours when I do that. And this is Annie as Annie resident voter only here right this minute. So that is something that I know happened. Okay, 20 entities and people, 19 against it, 1 for it, which is a lobbying group from Texas.
This is the first year they've been here.
Okay, so then it gets put in with no hearing, right?
Right.
And so it still needs to be voted on, so let's keep that in mind, with that. Your senators, that's who you need to be talking to right now, to vote no if you're against it. And House, correct?
Both.
Right, both, but it's going to the Senate next.
It is required. I apologize. I should have.
So I just want, like, this is not final. There's still time. I just want to be very clear about that. I appreciate the town hall. And this is kind of a suggestion of, can we have more town halls earlier on in session?
Yep.
I know Muncie does something, you do have to pay to get in. I would recommend no payment, that it's just done. So that people can share their opinions through the session and before it begins. I'm wondering what the data is on actual numbers of people. What's the scope of this problem in Madison County? That's where I live, in Anderson especially, but Madison County, what's the actual scope? Because, right, you give an example, and yet that doesn't qualify, right? So this is this tiny, and we're spending the money.
He's just letting everybody finish first.
I want to know how many people in an average percentage were for this or against it, reaching out to you in all those ways, showing up in all different ways. Is it more than half that said they want this? Please do this. Because I would love some transparency, like Maria said, on your constituents, your voters who are voting you in.
Yep.
My guess is its majority is against it, but maybe I'm off, and I'd love to know, am I wrong?
So-
Are more than half of us
Yeah.
constituents actually reaching out to you? If we have 100 of us, did more than half say, please do this? Please add a misdemeanor piece. This is needed. I would love to know those numbers, and I would ask you as my representative, give us some of that,
Yes.
so that we know what are the things we're fighting for, and how do we do that better?
And SB one, there's a whole bunch of bills like this.
So a couple things. So in terms of earlier town halls, happy to do it. It's in terms of talking about bills that are going to that have we're in the first half until you get to the committee deadline. You're very familiar with this. It's all, well, this could get a hearing, it could get a hearing. So I would be more than willing to do more, probably after the committee deadline, because before then, you could have literally 1,500 bills, and it's like, well, what about House Bill, I'm gonna say a random number, 1372, and it's like, I have no clue what that is. I don't know what that bill is off the top of my head. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, I have to literally be like, okay, what's, and so happy to do that. That's one reason why I do the radio during 4 times a month, just so that people can call and I try to push that online of, hey, if you want to do that. But yeah, happy to do more in person. Again, I would caveat, let's do it after that committee deadline, because before then, like I said, I would have to know 1,500 bills, and that becomes the point. Like there's always like 10 or 20 bills we all know, but then there's like, well, what about this random bill from this random author? And it's like he or she has not even attempted to get a committee hearing, and it's 30 pages, and I gotta like to give the answers, I have to read through them and really go through them and fix it. So yeah, answer is yes. I would love if organizations considered hosting the delegation. We have 5 state representatives, 1 senator. There's a reason that this is hosted by myself. I had them last. There was one at the UAW. There was one. I was in 23. I've done a couple I did one at the chamber. There's a couple others. The Madison County Tea Party, which is obviously politically right, but they open up to everyone. I understand some people might not feel comfortable going there, but I've done that one multiple times. Again, I understand feel.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. You used to have third house sessions, Terry can well remember.
Yeah, they stopped posting them.
No, we didn't stop hosting them. You stopped coming, not you.
I was gonna say, I've never been offered. I've never.
I know that. Mike Gaskell took the Republican Party out of that. We had a monthly meeting where you could come, with the public was present. We could go over bills throughout the entire session. Terry was always there. Jack Luch used to always be there. But Mike Gaskell got his little panties in a wad about a question he was asked by one of the news people. And he walked out and said he wasn't coming back. And then he said that he was going to start doing his own, which he never did. But you used to have that. It used to be called the third house.
Good reason not to vote for Gaskell, isn't there?
I want to be very clear. I've never been offered an opportunity since being elected. That those after I got elected, and that's not a statement I do. I just want to be clear. Oh, did Kyle say no? You wouldn't go those. I got elected.
No.
I actually asked because it used to be you and the Chamber of Commerce, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I asked Clayton. Clayton wanted to do it. There was concern that there wouldn't be enough legislators that would engage. So I wanted him. I wanted to. He didn't cancel it. It's a hey, if no one shows up, why we went?
No, Terry and
This is after. I'm talking.
Republicans that never showed up.
I'm talking about after November 2022.
I'm talking about all the way down the line. They were lucky to come to one meeting. Terry and Tim were at every third house. Terry missed one third house and that was when session was held.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You had the opportunity to do that. We'd like to bring it back. Are you folks going to show up and let the public
Yeah.
have it?
You have to invite them and see.
Let's work on schedule. I mean, let's work on scheduling because that's like if it's days I can't do it, then days I can't do it. But yeah,
I'd love to hear your response to Annie's question about how many people called you in opposition.
So on the opposition to the misdemeanor part, there's a couple dozen. It was a standard email. Most of you got responses. I try to get responses out in groups as much as I couldn't tell you exactly. I could find the exact number. I'd say a couple dozen. In terms of getting help for those who have mental health issues, those all that. I mean, hundreds, dozens. I mean, I could tell you the exact number, but yeah. So in terms of the provided service side, from day one, it's been a thing. The hard part though is they say on the how do we get them in the car if someone's in a schizophrenic episode, but they're not to the emergency level? There is nowhere in the law today. Nowhere.
And I would argue that's a value perspective, right? A value to make somebody get help. That's a value perspective and a moral perspective that I would differ on in making somebody get help.
So
I would say.
I guess here's the question is, what if someone's in a mental crisis and they are lacking the, because right now, if you commit a crime and you are in a mental health episode, you can actually use, I'm talking about like violent crime. You can use that as a legal defense, right? Because we acknowledge as a society that someone who has lost the ability to determine from right and wrong, that is a legal defense. It doesn't mean you're getting scot-free. You might be in a facility for the rest of your life or whatnot. But so we acknowledge that in the legal system today, that if you were, I think it's technically unsound mind or whatever it may be called. But so we acknowledge that once they've committed a violent crime, but do we have to wait for that individual to acknowledge that that person is of not right mind? And I'm not talking about, doing the HHS approved plan is the only, that's the right, I'm not saying right? Someone goes to your office. Someone goes to someone's office and asks for services. That might be the right plan for them. But the person who we acknowledge after they commit the crime, oh, well, they're not of sound mind. But before we have to say, well, they don't want it. And then we have to, is it, I mean, I won't escalate that. I won't escalate, but
But there's some value differences there. would.
I hear you. I hear you. Terry's next. I hear you. It's just, how do we get them in the car? And how do we acknowledge someone who, because of what they're going through, they don't meet this one, but they're in that middle. And there's right now no civil ability. Okay.
The state of Indiana has a bad habit of not paying its obligations. Case in point, they owe Madison County over $300,000
I think it's more than that now.
for not paying the prisoners, folks at community corrections as a result of House Bill 1006 that was passed back in 2018. I know that Greg Stewart-Wall, who was the author of 1006, was surprised to find out that those bills have not been paid. I mean, it's millions of dollars across the state. So now that the revenue forecast has come in and we're expecting less money for the state of Indiana, what assurances can you give, not just us, but the taxpayers of Indiana or taxpayers of Madison County and the county commissioners, that we will see that over $300,000 and make up? Because right now, all of us are paying the state's bill.
Yeah. So I'd say within 4 hours of the economic forecast coming out, we are just now at the starting point of what will that new budget look like. The discussion's been that the reimbursement rate, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's $37.50. It might be $36.50 that you have in front of you.
$37.50, raising it up to 42 in the budget.
Yes.
But you can't get blood out of a turnip.
That is true. That's true. So within 4 hours of the economic forecast, we're in the front. We're in the first steps. I do agree, though, that we need to make sure that we're either being paying them, or what Representative Chris Jeter is working on is, why is there an incentive to keep them at the county level? It's because it's cheaper for the state to keep them there than it is to travel them to a DOC facility. So because there was a big discussion because in August when they stopped August here, I can't speak to every county, but August here, they stopped coming and stopped picking them up. And so there was a lot of us saying, we have a budget committee, we can use the funds that have been returned from different agencies, they've not overspent or whatnot. Why not just shift it over and do a lump sum and get this over with? Well, the question is, what's the inverse or the adverse incentive for why they're keeping them there? It's because it's cheaper. So we need to say, if you are not picking them up, DOC, you will feel the pain of it. And that's why there's been that two side of it. That was before the economic forecast. Everything changes, as you know. You were there for 20 years. Melanie was there for 6+ years. The budget starts once that second economic forecast talks about. You are often on with Jim Barrett. He always talks about it starts once the economic forecast comes out in April. And so we'll see now how do you put it all together. But it's something we need to make sure, even if we pay the counties more, that we need to either give a stick or a carrot to DOC if you are going to pick them up. And that's why you've seen the budget committee not address it in those, because they had a budget committee meeting today, and they had one in December, and I'm missing one. And so that's why you're not seeing that.
The state budget agency oversees the different agencies and departments. I mean, and we've got a reserve. We've got a $3 billion reserve. And I understand the forecast. I think by your own admission, you said we're gonna have to cut $2 billion out of the budget somewhere.
$2 billion of growth in the current budget. Year over year, the money still, the forecast still goes up, but it goes from a 4.5% in the first year, I think, down to it goes down 1.8, and then the second fiscal year is up to 0.8. But you are 100% right. The budget committee controls that. You could say, well, you just shift over the money, but we have to. When the water's leaking out of the pipe, yeah, we can patch the pipe. But if the water's still getting through, we got to turn off the water. In this case situation, we have to turn off the inadvertent or adverse incentive of why are they leaving them there. And it's because it's cheaper for them to stay there than it is to take them in DOC. So we need to say, you are going to get them up. And that's where Representative Chris Jeter, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, has been working on that with Representative Sturwell. Who was first? Steve?
Okay, I kind of want to use Annie's question because she I hit it on the head. Again, we've already talked a little bit about my lack of trust with the government right now. And especially after what happened on Monday night with SB1, being so late and kind of jumbled together. And so my question again is how, it feels like when you see that many teachers show up, and I know I was calling, I know a lot of other people were calling. Can you share with us those numbers of like how many people said, please don't do this? And how many people said, yes, this is a great plan, let's go forward? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really hard as a voter to say, thank you for listening. And I just feel like I'm calling and calling, and I apologize to your staffers all the time. I'm really sorry. I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but it just, I'd like to know how we can know that we're actually making a difference, or if you're just paying us lip service. No offense. I'm sure.
I hear you. Here's what I'll say back though. If and let's walk away from 197 and let's go to a different issue. If I have 300 people, if I send out a text message to people saying, do you like, let's walk away from 197, some issue, right? Do you like this or don't like this? If you don't like it, click here, right? And this ain't an issue. That's an issue you don't like. Something you do not like, right? And that the other side sends me a text message. It sends the people a text message, and they click here, and it automatically sends me an email because most of those emails are automated. Now I still, some of you got responses today. I write a response. Now if it's not automated email, I will write not generic, but a individual response and then copy and paste them. So you'll see your emails at different times. So I will say this: people try to influence the General Assembly through emails and those automated emails. So if I receive 30 automated emails on something, that doesn't necessarily mean that the public is there on it. It means someone, again, let's walk away from 197, because I've received emails I've received hundreds of emails once on, don't do, what was it, a Medicaid waiver? And you know who paid for that? The hospitals who wanted to keep prices high. And what they did was they said, are you opposed to, I read the language, I apologize, it's been 2 years, I apologize. But they sent out hundreds of emails, vote against this bill, vote against this bill. They had Facebook ads. I was one of the folks who was trying to help on the bill, and they were lying to people. And that's where there's always this thing of the number of emails versus, okay, the content is always that balance.
I understand automating emails are not your favorite. I get
No,
that.
I'm fine with it. I want them in.
I don't even honestly mess around with them anymore because I think most of them just go straight in the trash.
Not for me.
Calling and those kinds of things. But I do know there are plenty of people who, it is a lot right now to be a human, to be a parent, to be a worker, to be a lot of things. So the fact that I actually prioritize either emailing or calling or checking on something is actually a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's frustrating for you to say, well, it's not really a big deal.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
It feels minimized. Okay. And apart from that aside, there have been times where I've gone to the state house and I've been gotten to the state house. We've listened to testimony after testimony saying, please don't do this. Experts saying, please don't do this. Please don't do this. Literally, we might have heard like 2 people say, this is a great plan. And then you guys go ahead with it. And so it's very frustrating because it's like, if all the testimonies say one thing, all the experts say one thing, people are sending emails, calls, showing up, talking to you, meeting for coffee, whatever that is. At what point I want to see those numbers of, hey, actually, this many constituents reached out to me, or this much feedback.
Email them to her.
It feels like, and there's a futile effort.
Email them to her.
So
we're working really.
He didn't bring them with him tonight.
To be a citizen right now, on top of other stuff.
So I'm gonna be very clear. You had said I don't care, or I don't want to say the word.
Yeah.
I don't think you.
Again, my brain fog, I don't know what I said 5 minutes
So I
ago.
was very clear. Every single email.
Yeah, it feels like.
You minimized her emails.
Read every single email, and you will get a response from me. So Rebecca mentioned one today. That is written by me, and it's the email response is not from my H36. It's from kyle.pierce@iga.in.gov. That is my personal government email. Most folks, we talked on the cell phone yesterday. So I always give out my cell phone. I always try to get as much things as possible. What I'm trying to say is, as a representative, sometimes I need to make sure, just because there are other times there are bills that I go through that, hey, no one had noticed it, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't take the time to deep dive into it, right? There are other bills that like I've had no one engage me on. Does that mean the bill doesn't matter? No, there are bills that are of immense importance that I have that I will receive zero input from. But my level of should I engage this bill does not start from, well, no one's engaged me on it, so it doesn't really matter. No, I need to
And I'm
engage.
talking about the ones where I know there's hundreds and hundreds of people calling or showing up. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. At what point do you make those decisions of like, I've heard experts after experts say this is a bad plan, but I'm gonna go against it.
It's
You know what I mean?
it's always holistic. It's always holistic. We'll go to you and then you and then Cheryl.
Okay, Senate Bill 1, I need a little more clarity on this because, is there something that says that small school districts are gonna be required to consolidate, or is it an option? What is the consolidation issue?
There's one
with small school districts?
There's one district in Henry County that is not Henry
Union?
with Union School, I think it's in Randolph.
Union School has like 300 students, but they have
Yes.
online.
Yes.
School that has 6,000.
Yes.
That feeds with that.
Yeah, and it's available only references Union schools. It doesn't reference.
So it doesn't reference okay, so what, if they close that school, what happens to the online school?
So that there are multiple online vendors, and so, there are multiple virtual vendors. And so some of it, and it goes, I think it's over 2 years, and so that will be determined over the next 2 years of where they would potentially go. In terms of where the in-person students will go, I think most will go to Blue River. I can't believe it's Blue River School District. I think the full title of it. Yeah.
So my understanding is that school district is really servicing those 300 students and they don't want to lose it.
The numbers for in-person, the district numbers are not very high. They're low on many metrics. I can't do the exact right here in the moment, but many of them are very low. So you and then do
Here was saying, just on Monday, I mean, she's talking about how many phone calls, emails compared to opposition calling and emailing and whatnot. On Monday, I wasn't there, but I saw it's all over Facebook. You literally had thousands upon thousands of people in the State House telling you not to vote on this bill. So in comparison to those thousands that were standing there, how many thousand did you have standing there?
So that was in the Senate. So the Senate bill, were you there or you had folks there? Senate Bill 1. It was Senate Bill 1. It was back in the Senate. So the body that was voting was in the Senate. It was not in the House. And so there were some, like the way that if you're in the State House, like it overcrowds, but a lot of it was focused on the Senate side because that's what the bill was. But yeah. Cheryl and
So, I may not have a popular opinion here, but I do appreciate Kyle. I appreciate he always answers my texts, my calls. And I do support a bill to address the homelessness. As we've said, I don't know that this addresses it completely or maybe in the manner that I feel like is the best appropriate way to address it as somebody who works in the healthcare field. Officers do receive a certain amount of training. We can't add more to our EMS. They're already, especially not this city or this county, they're already overstretched. But, you know, when you come into our town, the homeless have really destroyed many parts of our town, and our town is not as beautiful as it used to be. And there's homeowners that their properties are being destroyed. There's business owners that could potentially be losing revenue because of this. So we have to find a solution. And as I told you when we were messaging, I don't know that this addresses, and you said that it's a, you know, it's a start. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, it's a stepping stone to get us where we need to go. I'm glad that they're not going to push it through too quickly. But I do think we have to find a balance. And I believe in a quick search I did here, I think there's 4 state hospitals still open in the state of Indiana. I would challenge you to call and see what the wait list is on them.
I guess it's long, and that's where
I think that's.
it's a residential need versus local. There are some.
The library will be closing in 15 minutes. Please finish making your selections and check out your material.
So out of respect, I will get you in 1 second. Out of respect.
Attention customers. The library will be closing in 15 minutes. Please finish making your selections and check out your material.
So out of respect to the library employees, let's do 5 minutes. I need to laugh. We'll go 5 more minutes. I am gonna give out my cell phone number, so if, I'm gonna give that person, I'll give you a question. Oh, yes, you can.
They want to know if you're going to answer that state thing.
Yeah.
Okay, you're hot. I'll hurry.
Okay, so Pam, not quick, but I did leave a question. I apologize.
You know what? I'm gonna watch Rebecca's feed.
Okay.
I've got a kid, I gotta go get.
Okay, you go get it. Thank you. With the prevalence of, mental illness and mental illness among homeless, it just hit me that there are so many parents struggling to get their children, adult children help, but they can't force them.
Yep.
So let's say they kick him out of the house and that child comes back and he's there for, I mean, I'm thinking this might be a good thing for parents and he's there for 24 hours and he won't leave.
Because it's not public.
It has to be a public
It has to be a
place.
public-
Got it, okay. Second thing I just want to say, I hope that your bill for homes that are 85 years plus can get a tax credit. I called the Madison County Historical Society today. Over 75% of Anderson Township homes are 85 years and older. So I hope that that can come back because that would not only help the homeowner, but it would be good for local businesses to invest. So thank you for sponsoring that bill. I hope it can come back. I'm sad to see that it's not going anywhere, but it could benefit over 75% of Anderson Township homes.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna use this last question. I apologize, Catherine, for skipping. So the question is, will I support the removing of the board that was put in by the Senate Senate on the budget regarding the Trust Indiana. So because it was over in the Senate, I'm just now getting the first time. If it, in terms of if it's, and I've heard Treasurer Elliott and his concerns. I would like to see it how it currently is. I don't see there needs to be a reason to change over in terms of doing this board setup. I would also like to see this, so right now 50% has to be invested so that the local units of government are safe. It's supposed to be pretty much the safest investment a local unit of government can make. So while I agree with him on not having the board, he would like to take 100 from 50% to 100%. I would be fine if we went like a 75% or 80%, but the fund, that particular fund is meant to be a hyper safe investment. He has a couple of options. So it's one of those where I agree with him in terms of what happened, all that stuff, making sure that the fund is still extremely, gives up massive returns. That's obviously because it's public money. So that part, because it's over the Senate, that whole discussion that he was having, we haven't had it yet. So we'll have to see. So I know that's not a clear answer on that, but that happened, I think, literally Thursday. So and it was over.
So you don't know if you'd be for it or against it yet?
I'm not saying at this point, it's hard to know because we haven't even had the discussion yet in the House. And we haven't even started it because it was, and sometimes when things happen in the other chamber, if I'm not following it, I've not fully got caught up. So at this point, I know there's a discussion happening about it. Don't know what the board's authority would be.
You just need to gather more.
I don't disagree with him in terms of if he feels like it came out in the last second. I don't like that at all. It is what that board is, what's supposed to be. They're supposed to restrict his investing. Is it? They're advising. That's one thing. So it's all very new. And we had a conversation with WIBC just on Friday. So I'm still getting caught up on that because I'm still working on the House bills that we're wrapping up. The budget, like I said, the economic forecast just came out, so we're just now starting. So it's one of those where it's still very early. So, okay, I apologize. That's because of the time we have to get going. Thank you so much. I will get my cell phone real quick. I apologize. Okay, so cell phone 317-443-1791. I'll give that again. 317-443-1791. My email, Kyle, Kyle, Pierce, Pierce, at the letters iga.in.gov. I will say these last 8 days, please a little grace and response time. .gov. Kyle.pierce@iga.in.
Text.
Do I text? Yes, that's myself. That's myself. Thank you so much. By the way, just a couple questions. Let's go outside. I'm ready for
Libraries give me some of this,